Hello, this is Betamax80. So I'm recording this video very late, but it's something I really wanted to get done and out of the way before sleeping. I wanted it to be done today, really, so that I can move on from it, having actually documented this the way I really want to. Um, so I'm calling this video "Autopsy of a Meltdown." Just before we continue, if any people who have been involved in the day and work out the day involved are watching this video, I want you to know that this is in no way any kind of personal attack to any individuals involved. It's just the result of an unfortunate culmination of events. And to be honest with you, meltdowns I have, and I think a lot of people with ASD actually have, are not really down to any one event. They're down to a very unfortunate culmination of a series of events, and I think it's important that that's taken in perspective. I'm not going to be using any names because I don't think it's relevant to this. I'm not going to state the day itself, but I'm sure that people who were involved would know the day involved. So I just want those individuals to know that there is no individual blame being placed or blame at all. Um, the meltdown situation was just a culmination of factors, really. Factors which I'm wanting to go through here. So I've actually written down on a piece of paper the series of events so that I don't miss anything out and so that I don't get anything wrong and out of context. The reason why I want to document this is because I'm aware that I am fortunate in having ASD, but also being able to articulate myself fairly well and recall events. So that's the reason I'm really wanting to document today, because I'm aware that I have a fortunate position in being able to document events and want to do so, really. Partly for my learning, partly for my future recall, partly to hopefully help others, parents, families, and individuals with ASD, perhaps think about times they've been in meltdown, how they handled it, as I'm reflecting how I handled this situation myself, and hopefully have a think about how to best handle the situation when it occurs. Okay, so I'll go through today, event by event, through the day. Sorry. So just to explain the subject matter. To explain, I'm actually a university student. I'm on a healthcare related course. I think I've mentioned this before. The subject matter of the day, for a full day's lectures, was actually ASD. It was a sort of a whistle stop tour of autistic spectrum disorders, autistic spectrum conditions, presented by a professional related to the ASC medical community. Um, Looking back, I realised that the reason I was having problems in coordinating and um, executive function, really, and personal care, that morning, was because of the subject matter. To put it in perspective and to clarify, my pathway towards an ASD diagnosis actually began by taking notes during an autistic spectrum disorder awareness day, which was being run for professionals. So this really does hit a raw nerve for me at times. It's something I try to, um, I have hoped to move beyond, and so far it hasn't really been an issue because I haven't really come into contact with this kind of day, these kind of activities since my diagnosis. But I found it very difficult in the event. Um, I have put down in my notes that I felt that my capability, I'm going to call it capability. It's a very hard thing to kind of put into words. A lot of people in the ASD community call these spoons. We call it spoons, and we talk about how many spoons we've got left and running out of spoons, and the fact that there are no spoons left to give. It's something like that. It's kind of, let's just say, it's kind of how much of yourself you feel able to give to the world at that particular point in time. I hope that makes sense. So it's how much of you, your heart, your mind, your body, you actually feel you have to spare to the rest of the world, other people, situations around you, events that may occur. So I'm calling that capability, but I hope that you understand the context of that. So my capability was feeling about 10% when I woke up. And I didn't wake up until 10:30. I managed to switch off both alarms completely subconsciously, which is proving to be a problem for me. I'm actually looking at under pillow vibrating alarms at the moment because this is such an issue. But it looks like I managed to switch them both off in my sleep, and they need to be physically switched off. So it's a bit of a skill. So I woke up at 10:30, which is an hour and a half after the lecture should have started. Very annoyed at myself. Had fully planned to push myself to get there for the day. As I say, woke up an hour and a half late with only about 10% capability to spare, feeling terrible, feeling shaky, feeling like executive function just was not right, was feeling the effects of almost like the effects of a bug, almost like the phantom effects of a bug, really. It's not that I was physically with a bug, but let's just say that I was feeling very queasy. That's the best way to explain it. A very queasy feeling like you need the bathroom constantly was kind of where I was at. So I really tried to motivate myself to get moving for the day. I thought, okay, I have a schedule today. I looked at the timetable. I knew that there was a specific meeting I needed to attend at 12 p.m. That was the next scheduled event after this first lecture. I thought, right, I can push myself. This meeting isn't about this subject. This meeting is separate. Get to this meeting. You're up. You're moving. You're where you need to be for the second lecture. And hey presto, you can make it through if you do this. So, long story short, I did make it for the meeting. I attended. I came back to the flat to repack my bag on the way back to the university. This would have been about 12:30, 12:40. I would have come back home and gone back over to the university, to the place of study. On the way back, I have to cross a fairly busy main road. There is a zebra crossing, which is a pedestrian designated crossing place for those who may not be in the UK. So I was crossing the road there. There was a car that came up seemingly very fast and had to brake fairly abruptly. But I had already committed to crossing the road by that point, and it had come in the other direction very quickly. The driver swore at me as I crossed the road on the crossing, and revved his engine and skidded off within about 2 seconds of stopping. I was extremely shaken by that, and that reduced my capability again, really. So I managed to get up to about 20% capability before the meeting. I was on about that. But situations like that, just being shouted at when you're doing absolutely nothing wrong and you can't control what happens, that really affects my capability as well as my mood. So I would say my capability had just about peaked at 20% for that meeting, and as soon as that driver decided to swear at me for doing nothing wrong, I was back down to 10%. I was back down to where I'd started. I was shaking. I was having trouble coordinating. The dyspraxia had kicked in, and my gait, my walk was not as it should be. And I could feel that, but I just tried to keep going. I was trying to press forwards and keep going because I thought I can get food. I've told myself I can do this afternoon. I'll do it. Next thing happened. Just getting here. There we are. So it would have been about 12:40 that I was in the university building, heading towards the canteen, where a couple of people from my course, a couple of colleagues, came back in the other direction and let me know that the afternoon session, the afternoon lecture, had been moved forward from a 1:30 start time as timetabled to a 1 p.m. start time. that gave me 20 minutes to actually get food and walk back to the lecture itself, which is about a 5-minute walk through various corridors. So it was already looking fairly tight, but doable. I was stressed. I was stressed. I was already at 10% capability. That information took me down to about 5% capability. I was running pretty low. That, let's just say that the petrol tank in the car was fairly low for comparison. I was not doing so good. I was really pushing myself, and I was almost at my complete limit of capability before basically needing to disappear and wait for the ground to swallow me up. I got to the canteen. Some good friends said hello to me and said, come over, have a chat. I was so worried about the time frame that I had in order to eat and get to the lecture that I told myself I would get to, that I unfortunately my response was quite loudly, no, just no. And that's what I said, and it was that loud and with that tone, and I regret it deeply. But unfortunately, that was the start of the lowest point for me. So I went to the counter thinking, okay, I've got time for something that's a quick snack. I'll get a jacket potato. I can eat that and be gone in about 5 to 10 minutes. This is achievable. That wasn't possible because the canteen had impromptu, without sort of prior warning or advertising the fact, had decided that it was Christmas dinner day, and the only thing that I could actually order was a Christmas meal. I really wasn't in the mood for a Christmas meal, but I was also very hungry, and I didn't have the time to get to an alternative food source. So I ordered a Christmas meal. There were no clean trays available, so I was balancing plates, and then I had to go and get a drink, and I was balancing a bottle of drink under one arm and 2 plates. Remember that already my walk was not right, and I was shaking. I have the dyspraxia, and my balance was feeling very dubious at this point as well. I got to the till, holding these 2 plates with a drink under my arm. The person at the till was changing the till rollover in the card machine. I held out a note. I was wanting to pay by cash, and I held out a note. However, the individual at the till continued changing the card machine till receipt, which I thought may be vital to the purchase. I had no idea. I wasn't sure. So obviously I waited patiently as long as I felt I could, but I felt my balance was deteriorating further. As I said earlier, there were no clean trays. I ended up walking through the queue to the dirty tray pile. That there's a dirty tray trolley type system that you can actually access from both sides, and I was so desperate at this point to restore my balance and not drop anything that I cut through the queue and actually picked up a dirty tray to put my plates and my drink on. That I got a fair few looks from the queue. I don't know if it was the expression on my face, which I'm sure was very angered, or whether it was just the act of cutting through the queue. Anyway, I did get the tray. I went back to the checkout. He continued to change the till receipt. This process, the process of ordering food and waiting for the till receipt to be changed, had taken 5 minutes by this point. Obviously, I was already starting with 20 minutes, and I was down to less than 15 at this point before I was due to be in a lecture. I was quite stressed. He did eventually change the till roll effectively, and then he said, "Oh, you're paying by cash. I didn't realise." I was upset, but I was already so exhausted I almost couldn't speak at this point. So I just carried on and smiled as best as I could while he took the money for the food, gave me my change. When I sat down, I only had 12 minutes left to actually eat and get to the lecture. On top of that, I got a phone call. I later discovered that the phone call was a sales call from a life insurance company. I picked it up and answered. Somebody laughed down the phone. I couldn't cope with that. I just said, "Hello, this is Mark speaking." I said, "This is Mark speaking." Didn't hear anything. Got a laugh down the phone. Put the phone down. Sat at the table with my food in front of me. Almost burst into tears at that point. Really couldn't cope. I literally was out of capabilities at that point. I couldn't speak to anyone. I couldn't look to anyone. I couldn't eat. I was just finished. I wished I hadn't even got up that morning at that point. I was on the edge of tears. I really was. It's at that point I looked at my phone clock after taking that phone call that was nothing to do with anything anyway. And I just thought, you know what? I've got 12 minutes. It's not possible. I've been given this ridiculously over complex meal that I didn't ask for, hadn't planned for, and I'm now supposed to be at a meeting having not sufficiently eaten, at a lecture, having not sufficiently eaten to actually feel like I have enough energy to get through the afternoon, about a subject that is extremely personal to me and is bound to make me feel either very sad, incompetent, or disappointed at myself. And I also have no capability left, and I'm not sure that I would be able to function properly in that classroom without drawing undue attention to myself, or perhaps even breaking down in tears. I decided at that moment that I wasn't going to attend that lecture, that I was going to eat my dinner. I was going to take as long as it took to eat that dinner. I wasn't going to rush it. And then I was going to find my own thing to do, because I just knew that lecture had just been ruled out for me by that time, at that minute. So that's what happened. That was the meltdown at its worst ebb. Okay, what else happened? Let's see. Okay. So suddenly my coping strategies kicked in. Deciding that the lecture was now ruled out for me was the first piece of coping strategy. The second strategy was to eat as much as I could, so that I did have energy to do something positive for the day and improve my mood. The third strategy was to do something constructive with the day, because otherwise I would have gone back to my room in my flat. I guarantee I would have burst into tears. I would have slept. I would have woken up hours later in a very depressed state. So instead of that, I decided to make use of a missed delivery card that I had, go to the nearby shopping area, and to collect the parcels that I had waiting for me, because I knew that they would be technology related. See some of my other videos, and I knew that being technology related, they would cheer me up in some form. So I had a plan. I had food in front of me. Okay, I was back up to 10% somehow. I managed to get myself up to 10% capability. I ate most of the food. I couldn't finish it. I ate most of it. I did okay. I went outside of the campus, waited for the bus. While I was waiting for the bus, I messaged the group. I'm actually going to get my phone, and I'm going to actually tell you what I said to the group verbose, because it seems the right thing to do. Bear with me a minute. Bear with me. It's not here. Sorry to keep you waiting. Okay. My message was, can we just leave the breaks as they are timetabled in the future, please? Shortening them and altering them from the timetable is really penalising me. I need to know what's happening in advance, and I need the time to prepare, even if it's from morning to afternoon. Ask the lecturer, he'll explain. That was due to the relevance of the lecture. So that was the message I left. I had generally fairly positive responses to that at the end of the day. I think that the relevance of the lecture possibly had an influence on that, which is possibly useful in explaining things in some ways. So anyway, I stuck to my plan. I went to the nearby shopping area. I did collect my parcels. I picked up a Danish pastry, restored the sugar levels, and I came back to my flat. Got a friend giving me a phone call saying, luckily I finished early. Would you like to meet up? I fell on the opportunity to do so. This was the same friend that unfortunately I had been saying no, just no to at lunchtime. This person fortunately has experience with autism and other ASD conditions. Thank heavens, really. I got a hug. I got a listening ear. I got to debrief. I got reminded that today was just one day, and of all the days, probably the one day that I would be fairly knowledgeable about. Not to beat myself up, to be kind to myself. Sometimes on days like this, however much you know that it's just one day, and you know to be kind to yourself, and you know you're okay, and you know you're doing all right, you still need to be told. I need somebody around who will tell me that it's just one day, that things will be all right, to give me that hug every so often. I'm very fortunate at the moment. There are times in my life that I haven't been, and I know there are many of us with ASD that don't have understanding friends, aren't able to get that hug, that reminder when we need it. It's vital. It really is. So that really is the autopsy of my meltdown. If this happens again, it will happen again. I tell myself it won't. I tell myself this was the last time to learn from it. It will happen again. Culminations of negative events will happen again, unfortunately, and I will lose the capability to deal with them because I have an ASD condition. It's something I have to realise and process. It's a fact. If it does happen again, I'll try to document this again. I'm documenting this one so that hopefully I and others can learn from it. I do hope that this proves useful to others. Please have a good evening, good day, good morning or afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Bye for now.